We had some questions about my featured tip that's in the newsletter. This one was called Staying Ahead of the Curve, Uncovering the Most Dangerous Cyber Threats to Small Business. And I give some step-by-step instructions. So we're going to go through this because it applies to businesses as well as home users. There are so many threats out there. And so what we've been doing, when I say we, I mean my wife and I, is putting together these featured tips in our free newsletter that goes out every week. And it is rather extensive. We're trying to do a very good job on this. She's already got 50 of them written. So there's at least a year's worth of these coming out in the newsletters. And they're designed to try and keep it simple, giving you step-by-step instructions and making it so that it's only going to take you 5 or 10 minutes to lock something down. So rather than going to one of my bigger courses or whatever, if you want to try and keep your small business computers or your home machines safe, all you have to do is read this every week and just, make a little change here and there. We're trying to make it very simple. But we also have to remember that when it comes to cybersecurity, it's not a one and done situation. Cybersecurity is something you have to stay on top of. So I don't want you to think either that this means, ta-da, you're all set, right? You've got to keep up with stuff. And that's the reason you read the newsletter, I think, in most cases. This week, I got a note from one of the listeners, and I'm just trying to find what his name is. I think it was a guy. Yeah, here we go. And he is talking, his name's Larry, and he's talking about Grammarly. Now, Grammarly is something that I've mentioned on the air before as a completely indispensable tool if you are writing, if you're a business person, if you're a student, if you want to make sure that your spelling's correct, your grammar's correct, punctuation, right? All of that sort of stuff. That's what Grammarly does, and it is absolutely fantastic for doing that. But he reminded me of something that I probably forgot to mention to you guys, right? And that is, there are security concerns. Because remember, when you're using something like Grammarly, it goes and uploads what you're typing into the cloud, right? So in other words, up into some data center somewhere that they are most likely renting space at, right? I doubt most companies nowadays like Grammarly would bother owning the infrastructure because it lets them, the cloud upscale, downscale is perfect for them, perfect for startups. Although the cost can be kind of high. So you want to stay ahead of the curve, uncover really your mistakes in writing. And nowadays, everybody's talking about these AIs out there, ChatGPT being the one most people talk about. I use a couple of others. I'm trying to get this company on, and it's hard to reach people nowadays. There's so much spam, and they just don't know, should I read this email? Should I read this email? And then on top of it, they are all worried that, oh no, the media, we're going to get ripped to shreds. No, come on. I don't do that. I've done over 8,000 interviews now with C-level people and aired them. And I have never, ever backed anybody into a corner. So I'm not going to do that. But I want to get these guys on because they have a tool that is absolutely amazing. And it's designed for writing stuff. And I've been using it for some of the blog posts we put up. And people have been commenting on how much they like them. And these blog posts are, again, this type of thing that we're going to talk about now, which is staying ahead of the curve and what are the biggest cyber threats to people out there. And it is great because what it does is it helps you to structure it. So it comes up with the structure. You can change the general structure, the titles, right? The subtitles, all of that stuff. It just generates them, which is wonderful. So I go in, I'd say most of the time I get rid of maybe a third of those little titles it comes up with suggestions, and I add in probably a half a dozen more, and then we work together and flesh it out and everything. It's just a fantastic tool. And it is an AI, but again, remember, AIs cannot be trusted, but they are great when you're writing. And you got that good old writer's block, and that's exactly what this particular AI is aiming at, is people that have to do writing, not necessarily for a living, but have to write stuff. So if you're an HR department, et cetera, et cetera. But remember, it gets uploaded to the cloud. So if you're writing a document in Grammarly, and let's say there's some confidential information in there, there's some PII, personal identifiable information, you don't want to use one of these tools that pushes it up to the cloud. And one of the main reasons is it's against the law in most cases, but the other reason is, well, what happens when they get hacked? That cloud server gets hacked, that company gets hacked, and your information is now part of a paste bin. Right? It's out there. Bad guys have it and could be used against you. So you got to keep that in mind. And again, I want to thank Larry for pointing that out. It's a very good point. And I did try Grammarly on my phone, and Grammarly has a keyboard. So as you're typing, it's sending what you're typing up to the cloud, and it is helping you to fix grammatical problems with it. And I expect here shortly it'll even help you write whatever you're typing. So that means text messages. That means whatever document you might be working on, whatever website you might be on, and it's going up to the cloud instantly. Now, one of the nice things about the Grammarly keyboard and using it on iOS, if you are down in the typing area, you can select your keyboard. So in mine, I've got two keyboards. I've got an English keyboard and a French-Canadian keyboard that I use. And obviously, those are designed for different languages and what you might want to type in. It's kind of handy, by the way, if you're multilingual, because it will even let you type in another language than your keyboard is set to. So you can be typing in English and throw in a French phrase, and it will go ahead and do it all the French stuff for you. But be very concerned about stuff like this, right? Pay attention. It's so easy to use, and it is so helpful. We kind of many times overlook some of the security threats that are involved. If you're using Google Docs, I put together my Insider Show Notes newsletter, the one that has that featured tip every week. I put it together along with my team in Google Docs. Now, I'm not worried if somebody steals it, because we're going to post this on the website. It's going to go out in the email, Insider Show Notes, or, it's going to go out there somewhere. So I'm just not worried about it. But, be careful, because if you're used to using it for stuff that doesn't really matter, it's not regulated, it's not personally identifiable, doesn't have your bank account in it, it just gets so easy to kind of forget about that. And then you're in real trouble, because you're now using it for things that you should never have used it for. And if you were thinking about it, would never use it for. So a little word of advice, and thanks, Larry, for the reminder again about that particular problem. So let's get into this here. We're going to cover right now, we only got a couple of minutes left in this segment, but here's a high level, okay? There's a lot of different cyber threats out there. They are changing every week. Every patch Tuesday, Microsoft releases new patches, including what are called 0 days. And a 0 day means, hey, you have no defense against this particular type of attack unless you install this patch. That's what 0 day means in the Microsoft Patch Tuesday world, okay? There are many of them out there. And that's part of what we're going to be doing here, is helping you guys know about which particular patches matter to you? Which ones are being actively exploited? Which ones are expected to be exploited within the next 30 days? Isn't that exciting? So I'm going to be doing that sometime soon. Man, I've been working on that code for about 6 months, and I'm almost there, almost done. So that's going to be a good thing for everybody. So let me just give you the top 6 points, and then we're going to dive into them a little bit, because we had questions, as I mentioned, about some of the details. So ransomware attack, that's kind of a big deal. If you're a business, if you're an individual, it is as well. But hopefully you're doing backups. But we'll talk about this, okay? Because there's types of backups you should be doing and other types that just aren't going to work. Phishing scams that are out there, what are called advanced persistent threats, those are a very, very big deal. Insider threats, man, those have been around forever, haven't they? Let's see, distributed denial of service attacks and the information of things botnets. Now, this is really kind of interesting, too, because, man, botnets have also been around for a while now in the computer internet world. But did you know your light bulb could be used to bring down the Kremlin or the Pentagon or an airplane? Yeah, so that light bulb can, and we're going to talk about that. We'll get into this in some more detail. If you want to follow along, it was in this free newsletter this week, my insider show notes. Hopefully you got that. And if you don't, sign up at craigpeterson.com/subscribe, and you'll get one of these from me every week, and it will help you to know what to do, when to do it. We've also got a really interesting article I wrote about the new hunter-killer satellites that are preparing for space war. And we're talking about some private industry that's doing this as well. It isn't just government. Topic 1 here for what to be careful of is ransomware attacks. So we're going to tell you what you can do to help prevent them, to help cure them. And there's a little bit of good news here, not just on the horizon, but that's happened recently. We're following along the article that I had in my newsletter. Of course, we've done a few things differently lately, but the biggest one that a lot of people have commented on is Craig's featured tip. And this week, we're talking about the most dangerous cyber threats to small businesses and what you can do about them. Now, I have been very busy in updating the article on the website. So there's just a very brief summary in the newsletter. That way, if you're reading the newsletter and you don't care about this sort of thing, you can just kind of skim over it and move on to the next article. There's usually 6 to 8 different articles that I have in there. And some of them are mine, some of them are from third-party sites, etc. But it's all there in the newsletter. And then the link in the newsletter is going to take you to this rather detailed article that Karen and I wrote that really talks about all of this stuff and what you should be doing. I just noticed a typo. Let me fix that. So, number 1 here, the cyber threats. They're a growing concern, not just for business, but for individuals as well. And the very first one on this list is ransomware attacks. Now, again, follow that link. It's up on my website, and you'll get all of this description. But ransomware is still out there. Now, I mentioned good news, and some of the good news is that we have found the decryption keys for some of these pieces of ransomware. So I talk about it here in the article that if you are in fact hacked with ransomware, one of the things you should do is try and figure out what version of ransomware it is, right? Because if you know, you can check and see, hey, wait a minute. Now, wait. Oh, yeah, that is so cool. There is something that we can do about this, right? So that's the first thing. I've got a whole checklist here. In fact, I'm looking at it right now. What to do if you've been hit with ransomware. There's 7 different steps. But the reasons you should be concerned about it are financial loss, because, of course, you might be strong-armed into paying a ransom if you don't have really good backups, if you don't have a good way to restore. You are also going to lose your data. Now, you have to weigh this out, but the general advice from the FBI and cybersecurity experts is don't pay the ransom. So let's consider this here. You've got all kinds of data, and that data is no longer accessible to you. It might be stuff that's just absolutely key, primary, important for you to use and to have available right there for you, right? To run your business. So what happens if it's not available anymore? If your database program doesn't work, if your documents aren't there, if you're a lawyer, right? We've had some calls and helped out some of those law firms. It just, yeah, we're all set. And then eventually they call us back because they've been nailed. You've got to be really careful because you lose all of those things. What are you going to do with the court filings? What are you going to do about your tax forms? What are you going to do about patient records? What are you going to do about manufacturing? You don't even have your purchase orders anymore. You don't have anything that you would need to run your business. So you're sitting there saying, wait a minute now, they want, and whatever the amount of money is, maybe it's low, maybe it's only $25,000. Very frequently, it's a lot more than $25,000. Well, let's just say it's $25,000. Well, how much money are you going to lose if your business doesn't have access to your data? And so I can see you there with both hands, right? Well, on the one hand, on the other hand, and what should I do? Well, the FBI says don't pay. And part of the reason not to pay is now the bad guys know that you pay ransoms. And we're going to be talking about something called an advanced persistent threat here in a few minutes. But they know you pay. They've already got a foothold on your computer systems. You pay. Maybe you get your data back. FBI says it's about 50% of the time you'll actually get all your data back. Maybe you won't get your data back. We've talked about these guys before. It's incredible. You've got ransomware as a service people out there. They got tech support people. They kind of got everything. But your data loss is probably what's going to hurt your business the most. So what are you going to do? Right? Well, there's things you should have done before, but, and that includes backup. We'll be talking about that here a little bit later. Business disruption. What's going to happen in your business operations, right? You can't get your programs, you can't get your data. Privacy breach. Some ransomware attacks involve data theft. And now it's approaching, I think, about 50%. Half of them have your data. The first thing they do, they put some software on your computer, and then over the next few weeks, they poke around. They look at your network drives, right? Your J drive and your E drive and whatever you might have called those network drives. So they poke around, they scan around, trying to find, okay, what have we got out there? Okay, here's some Excel files, here's some Word docs, here's some other things. And then they evaluate all of that and say, oh, okay, well, interesting. And then they download them if they look particularly interesting. So they now have all of your data files. And then comes the double ransom. So they're saying, hey, listen, pay up, guy, or we're not going to decrypt your data or give you the key, whatever it is they're going to do for you. And then after you've done that, they say, oh, by the way, we have all this sensitive data of yours. And unless you pay us X more dollars, we're going to release it to the whole wide world. Interesting, isn't it? So now you're looking at a potential privacy breach. Do you have information on your computers, could be in a spreadsheet, could be in a Word doc, could be in a database, that is personally identifiable information, particularly on individuals? Names, addresses, phone numbers, that's all you need right there. And maybe you have more, maybe you have a social security number, etc. Be darn careful with that data, because in most states now, you have to report it. Many states have a fine. They'll look into it. Okay, so what are you doing? How are you doing it? What should you have done? And if you didn't do what they thought you should have done, bammo, you are nailed. You're in big trouble. So be careful of that. And of course, reputation damage. Look at what happened with SolarWinds. I was just talking about them yesterday. SolarWinds is a company that makes tools used by managed services providers. And they provide all kinds of just totally wonderful tools. Right? Yeah. Nothing to worry about here. So SolarWinds was out there, and they had monitoring tools that they were selling. They still do, if you can believe it. They're still in business. And their tools were used as a launching platform by the bad guys to get into hundreds of thousands of businesses out there. Yeah, they're still in business. It just shocks me. So, reputation damage? You betcha. Right? We don't use SolarWinds. We, in fact, approached them before they were hacked, telling them about the potential problems. In fact, maybe I should talk to an attorney about that. Maybe there's something there. But we warned them about it, and so we canceled their contract. Unfortunately, most places don't know enough about cybersecurity to realize what a hole they had even before they were breached. So what do you do if you've been hit with ransomware? I've got the list, 7 things. If you want me to send it to you, just email me, me@craigpeterson.com. You can click through the link in this week's newsletter as well. Hopefully you got it. It's called Stay Ahead of the Curve, Uncovering the Most Dangerous Cyber Threats to Small Business. And remember, too, it isn't just small business. These threats are presented to you as home users as well. So when we come back, we got more to talk about. Phishing scams, what you should know, advanced persistent threats, and a whole lot more. Online, craigpeterson.com/subscribe and get that free newsletter. We're running through some of the top threats right now when it comes to your data. Particularly interesting here is the threat to small business, but every one of these applies to home users. You could lose everything. You know, by now you know me. I'm not going to leave you high and dry, right? This isn't just trying to get people to freak out and then take some action that I'm not even going to tell them about. I have all of this. We're talking about all of this, all of the things you should do. And more specifically, I have it in my newsletter and on my website. And I'll be glad to send you this article. It goes into a lot of detail here. You should print it up and stick it in your drawer so that you have it if you need it, right? This is one of those playbook type things that could be very, very important for you. All of these threats, what you should do, how can you detect it, and what do you do after the fact if you've been hacked. Phishing scams, man. These things are constant. And phishing scams can be really hard to spot. I was just talking about them on the radio and this week, and the host that I was talking to was saying he got a very interesting little text message from his bank saying, "Hey, listen." Oh, no, it wasn't the bank. It was his cell phone provider. "Hey, listen, you are a good customer, so click here and we'll give you 10% off." So he was looking at it and decided, okay, well, I'm going to do some investigation here. I'm smart. I have Craig Peterson on as my guest. And he started doing some searching online. And he found online that, there's, there's my provider, cell phone provider. Yeah, they do have customer loyalty discounts. Yeah, and it's 10%. But he's still sitting there saying, what should I do? Is this a real phishing scam? You know, the goal of these scams is to get you to give up sensitive information. Things like your usernames, your passwords, credit card details. So he might do all of that research and say, okay, this is legit, but if I want to get this 10%, I got to click on this link that was text to me. You can click on that link. It'll take you to a site that looks just like your bank, or in his case, your cell phone provider, right? Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay, so it wants me to log in, right? My username, my password. Okay, here we go. And then your page refreshes and it asks again for you to enter username and password. And you're sitting there thinking, oh, okay, well, whatever. I must have messed something up. Here's my username and here's my password. Okay. But it doesn't say anything about 10%, so I'm going to dig around a little bit. Let me tell you what just happened. That first time when he clicked the link and he went to the website, supposedly of his cell phone provider, someone had cloned that homepage/login page from his cell phone provider and put it up on another website. So that's where it comes in handy to use that little lock. You might have noticed that up in the left-hand side of that URL bar. And it's telling you about the connection itself. And it'll tell you what's the certificate, who issued it, who owns this, right? All of that sort of stuff. So on my website, it says it's craigpeterson.com and it's organization's Cloudflare, because I'm using Cloudflare to protect craigpeterson.com. And also, frankly, to speed it up, right? All right, so that might be legitimate. It might not be legitimate. When it comes to banks, when it comes to bigger ones, you don't have to worry about that as much, the fact that it's Cloudflare. So I'm going right now. I'm going to tmobile.com. That's who I've been using now for a little while. It's saying, okay, I click that little lock to the left of tmobile.com. It says connection is secure, and I click on the certificate, and it says certificate's valid, and it says the name is tmobile.com, organization tmobileusa.com. So by using that little thing at the side, you can tell whether or not you are talking to a domain that is truly registered by who you think it is. So I'm going to Verizon right now, verizon.com. It's got that nice little lock, and it says connection is secure. So I click on that. It's telling me there's 82 cookies in use. Man, they like cookies, don't they? So it says the connection is secure, certificate's valid. So I'm going to click on that, and it says, yeah, its organization is Verizon Digital Media Services, Inc. All right, so that's probably their website. Now, what I don't want you to do is to do what I've seen done sometimes as much as a third of the time when people are coming to craigpeterson.com. You can type craigpeterson.com into the URL bar. That's the bar pretty much right at the top of the web browser. Now, if you're obviously using a mobile device, nowadays they're at the bottom if you're using an Apple iOS device, right? But you know where that URL bar is. It tells you who it is that you are talking to, what the page is. It tells you all that wonderful stuff. Good. Okay. Here's the problem. A lot of people, by default, when they open their browser, it's got a search box from Bing or a search box from Google or maybe DuckDuckGo. Could be a lot of different places, right? Got that nice little search box. So people will go ahead and type into that search box, craigpeterson.com. That's not where you're supposed to type it. So if you type in craigpeterson.com there, right at the top, it shows Craig Peterson, reliable cybersecurity for small business, it says, right? Make your cybersecurity compliance frustrations disappear quickly. NIST 800-171, CMMC, DFARS, blah, 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 right? All of this stuff. All right. And it's showing the URL is https://craigpeterson.com. You like it? Okay. So far, so good. The problem is there are ways to poison the search engines, and it's been done many times. And this happened to my father. My dad had a problem with Windows. So what does he do? He goes online and he does a search for Microsoft Tech Support, and he ends up with a scammer. Yeah, pretty bad, eh? Yeah, the security guy, his dad. However, my stepmother was kind of looking over her shoulder and gave me a call on the side and said, here's what's happening with your dad right now. So we hopped on his computer remotely and poked around and took care of some things for him. And it was pretty scary. So here's what can happen. It's one thing to search for Microsoft Tech Support. It's another thing to search for yourbankname.com, your cellphoneprovider.com, or craigpeterson.com, because those search results might not be what you're looking for. Okay? You got it? They might not be the right place. So if you don't type that URL for your cell phone provider into the URL bar, you could very well be going to a bad guy's website because of the search engine. So keep that in mind, right? That's what the phishing guys are trying to get you to do. So step one, he clicked on that link in his text message. It took him to a website. That website asked him to log in. Looked like it was his cell phone company. And then his page refreshed, and he logged in again. So that first time around, he was actually giving his username and his password to the bad guys on their website that looks exactly like the cell phone site. And the page refreshed. Why? Well, because the bad guys have his username and password, and they sent him to the real site. So he logged in there again. So be very, very careful with these phishing emails because they are nasty. Next up, advanced persistent threats. Join me online, craigpeterson.com. This one is probably the scariest of all of these tips that we're going to cover today, and that's called Advanced Persistent Threats, APTs. Unless you are a pro when it comes to cybersecurity, you might not have heard of these, but this is important. Well, so far we've talked about ransomware, including what to do if you've been hit with ransomware, but what are the attacks? How could it affect you? We talked about phishing scams, and we didn't have time to go through the concerns you should have, but in some ways they're pretty obvious. And I'd be glad to send you a link to this article. Believe me, I'm not going to harass you or anything else. Just email me, me@craigpeterson.com, and ask for it, and I'll send it to you. If you don't say anything in the email, other than send it to me at craigpeterson.com, you may not get a response because I don't know what you want. You're not talking to an automated system. You're talking to Mary or maybe Karen or I. You're not talking to an automated system. It's just going to start blurring you with all kinds of stuff. So make sure you reach out. Just email me at craigpeterson.com. Be glad to get back with you. Also, there are a couple of other things we may not get to today besides advanced persistent threats, but the insider threats, distributed denial of service attacks, IoT botnets, all of that is explained in this article that I'll be more than glad to send to you. Just email me at craigpeterson.com. Now, let's get into this here. The advanced persistent threats. I don't think most people have heard of these, but you'll understand the concept. This is a type of cyber attack where it's a group, really, of skilled and well-funded attackers. Many times they are what we call state actors. In other words, it might be North Koreans, it might be Russians, it might be, one of those guys. But they use some pretty sophisticated techniques in order to get unauthorized access to your computer network or your computers. And the idea is, once they gain access, they're going to keep up a long-term presence on your network without being detected. That's their goal. Right now, sometimes you can detect them. If they're really good, they're going to be really hard to detect. And the attacks themselves can often last for months or even years. That makes them way more dangerous than other forms of malware. And this is actually a very common type of attack. They'll get onto your network, they will poke around, they will find stuff, they will upload it, They might sell it to somebody, maybe even a competitor of yours, and then they might do something even worse. And I have seen cases where somebody got into a network of a business, and this is true for government agencies. I think there was even a DoD, Department of Defense one recently, and they'll steal some stuff, and then, they don't want to really hurt you too bad right off the bat. It's like a fox. I have chickens. I have chickens and I have bees, and we have cats and we have a dog, right? All of that sort of stuff. But when it comes to the chickens, I let them free range. So they go out in the pasture and, they eat bugs and weed seeds and stuff, and they just have an all-around good time. They love doing that sort of thing. But we also have foxes in the area. Foxes are interesting hunters. They won't just come and kill every chicken. They will maybe kill 2 or 3, and they will take them back to the den, usually one at a time. So they'll come back and pick it up. But they won't come back to my chicken yard, if you will, for a while. They actually move around. So they try not to over-harvest an area. So they took some of my chickens, and then they're going to go and steal and eat somebody's cat, and maybe they'll find some wild rabbits, and of course they eat mice, field mice, voles, moles, all that sort of thing, right? And they'll just keep moving. So they might not come back to my chickens for a few months. Well, that's very similar to how these advanced persistent threats work. These attacks will often last for months or even years. And the bad guys will get onto your systems. They'll find some stuff that they can either sell or use, and then kind of leave you alone. They'll take it, obviously, and do their thing with it. But they're not about to ransom, encrypt all of your data. Makes sense? So governments and these criminal groups are the ones that are usually using the advanced persistent threats. So here are some reasons you should be very concerned about these. Number one, obviously, is the persistence, right? It's right there in the name. They're designed to remain undetected for a long time, so the bad guys can get at sensitive data. They can get at the person identifiable information, trade secrets, intellectual property, customer data, right? They're targeted, very highly targeted. Unlike phishing attacks, and of course their payload could be ransomware, which are sent out just to anybody's email address they can find, usually. Phishing can be a little different. I have seen phishing attacks that are pretty well planned, so you got to be careful of some of those things that are out there, okay? But these things are sophisticated. They use social engineering. They'll pretend they are tech support, etc. I was really impressed with one of my clients. This is a new client, and they're so happy to have us. But we went out to one of their facilities to remove all of this old software that this other managed services provider was using, all of the SolarWinds and this other not so great software. We'll just leave it at that. And the employees there had us wait until they could confirm we are who we say we are. That was impressive, okay? Because that is what's called a social engineering attack. It's one of the types where you pretend, or the bad guys pretend they're the IT people. And as the IT people, they want access to the computers. Now they have access to the computers, they go ahead and put their software on. Now, they're not likely to show up at your door unless they're really after you. Governments might show up at your door pretending they are someone who they're not. But expect a phone call, okay? It happens all of the time. They'll also use some of these zero-day exploits that we hear about every month from Microsoft. I love how there's Microsoft Patch Tuesday. They put that in place because there were so many patches every day. They were getting a black eye. So, yeah. Don't worry about it, people. We might leave you exposed for 30 days, maybe 60 or 90 days, but don't worry about it. Microsoft drives me crazy. Obviously, there's a risk of financial loss. Very, very big deal. You could lose your financial information. We had that happen to a client as well, where they're twice now, I think, 2 different clients, where all of the money was stolen out of their operating account. Obviously, reputation can be damaged. You could get regulatory fines. And one thing about an advanced persistent threat that isn't the case with so many other things is it can take a lot of resources in order to recover from it. Resource-intensive recovery is what I've got here in this article. I'll be glad to send you this, by the way. All 7 points on this, as well as everything else. Just email me at craigpeterson.com. I'm glad to get it out to you. So you're going to have to conduct a very thorough investigation, figure out what happened, how they got in, close those holes. Then you have to do some more remediation here. You're going to obviously have to improve your cybersecurity measures, and you're going to have to reinstall all of your computers that might have potentially been touched by these bad guys. And I don't mean, I'm going to restore from backup, because you're probably going to restore the advanced persistent threat software, right, that you're trying to get rid of. I mean, you are installing from scratch. You're erasing the machine. Nowadays, there's even another problem, which is the machine itself may have had its boot files modified. Think of it as the BIOS from the old days. So every time your computer boots up, even if you reinstalled Windows, it's going to reinstall their malware. Insider threats, I'm going to go pretty fast here now because we're almost out of time for this segment. But insider threats are the most common type of cyber attack, believe it or not. So what is an insider? It's anybody working for you, could be a contractor, anybody that has access to your systems and data. So remember that. And their motivation could be money, could be revenge, could be ideology, right? They just hate the fact that you like something or vice versa. And it also could just be a desire to steal data, disrupt operations. And think about all of the times that it's hit the news, particularly in the automotive sector, where people have left one company, Google, Apple, Uber, those types of companies, and they brought with them a treasure trove, not just of knowledge, but of data from the company. So they're stealing plans, they're stealing all of this stuff. Very, very bad. So keep in mind, disgruntled employees could steal property. They can steal proprietary information. They could sell it on the black market. They could sell it to their new boss. The Chinese pay dearly for some of this information. Could be employees that are exposing some of your sensitive data, information, intellectual property because of poor password management. They might use the same password everywhere online and the same email address or username. Could be an employee who's deliberately tampering with your systems to damage them. And we've seen that again and again. That's why you've got to make sure you are using a system that will, in fact, allow you to completely disconnect them. Think of what happened here recently with some of these layoffs and firings in these big tech companies like Twitter and all. What happened? They were fired, and the way they found out is their email didn't work anymore. You have to be one single switch that cuts off all access. So there's more. It's right there in this article. Distributed denial of service, IoT botnets, different types of cyber attacks, point after point after point. And it's all available for you. Just email me, me@craigpeterson.com, or maybe you got it in my insider show notes already. Check there. But man, this stuff's important. Wow, this is world-changing, at least in the business world and the private world and all of our worlds. I don't know if you heard me talking about this before, but wow, this ML is changing everything. There is a piece of software out there called ChatGPT. It's from a company called OpenAI. OpenAI has had investments from all of the big players out there, including Elon Musk, who got that whole thing rolling. Now, I've been playing with ChatGPT for a couple of years now, but just near the end of 2022, they came out with a whole new version. And this new version, called ChatGPT 3, well, how is that for a really clever name, right? Is amazing. Absolutely amazing. So I'm involved in what they call their preview. Kind of think of that as an early beta program. And you can go in, if you're part of this, and ask it questions. Now, let's look at Google and what Google has been doing for a very long time. Their goal in life, their reason to be, was to make all of the world's information available. I'm sure you've heard that before. If you go to Google and you type in a question, or you type in, a number of keywords, which is how I tend to do it, you will get answers. But the answers are in the form of what? Links, right? So there's a whole bunch of links to articles. There's a little bit of context with each link to help you try and determine if this is something that you want to look at a little more, deeply, if you will. And what else is on that results page? Google makes its money by selling information about you, right? So on that search page, they have sold your information to advertisers who are going to place ads there. So think about that results page. There's ads maybe at the top, there's ads down the side, and nowadays there's even ads kind of intertwined. But everything's changing. I mean, changing. 2023, what a year. And a lot of it is because of ChatGPT. I have said for a very long time that I don't think true artificial intelligence is going to be around for a very long time, maybe never. So I'm kind of going to pull a bunch of different things together here. So bear with me now, because this is going to change everyone's lives, whether they realize it has changed their life or not. But they'll know. Believe me, they'll know. You'll all know. Everybody will know. I've already figured this out, okay? But when you are looking at trying to determine if a computer has some form of artificial intelligence, there's something that's been around for a very long time called the Turing test. Now, the Turing test was developed by Alan Turing back in 1950. And the idea behind the Turing test was that if you were on a computer, and let's say you were chatting, texting, we'll use modern terminology, texting with someone else, can you determine by the questions you ask and the answers you get whether or not you're talking to a human? Maybe you're talking to a computer. And for a very long time, it was pretty darn obvious if you were talking to a computer, wasn't it? Because the computers just weren't very good. Look at the Google results. They're pretty good in some ways. They're terrible in other ways. They're hand-tuned in some ways and not in other ways. You remember Ask Jeeves, if you've ever used that before, where that was human curated. And of course, there have been many others out there. Yahoo had this big kind of like a yellow pages of all the different topics. And people could list their websites in there, their products in there, put it all together. Well, you can look at some of these things and quite obviously pick out, well, this is computer generated. This is pretty poor. And part of the problem with stuff that's computer generated nowadays is the computer generated stuff is wrong and yet it sounds like it knows what it's talking about. Now, if you're a human being and you've interacted with people, you know there are people out there that have no clue what they are talking about, and yet they speak with just absolute authority, right? You have to trust them because they sound like they know what they're talking about. They're very, positive. Of course, I'm not going to draw a comparison here to Hitler of the Great Lie and just repeat it often enough, but why not? Because, in fact, he was able to get some amazing lies through people's heads. Why? Because he told the same thing multiple times, and they were able to get people to believe it, right? The big lie. Now, I'm not saying the computers are doing the big lie, but when you get what looks like a very authoritative answer from one of these computer systems, you might believe it. Now, there's a website out there that I've used, you might have heard of before. Heck, you might have used it before, that is designed for programmers and other technical people. It's called Stack Overflow. In fact, if you used Google or DuckDuckGo, you probably stumbled on Stack Overflow. And Stack Overflow now has a policy banning the use of AI, artificial intelligence. They're saying this is a temporary policy intended to slow down the influx of answers and other content created with ChatGPT. What the final policy will be regarding the use of this and other similar tools is something that we'll need to discuss with Stack Overflow staff and quite likely here on Meta Stack Overflow. Overall, because the average rate of getting correct answers from ChatGPT is too low, the posting of answers created by ChatGPT is substantially harmful to the site and to users who are asking and looking for correct answers. The primary problem is that while the answers which ChatGPT produces have a high rate of being incorrect, they typically look like they might be good, and the answers are very easy to produce. There are also many people trying out ChatGPT to create answers without the expertise or willingness to verify that the answer is correct prior to posting. Because such answers are so easy to produce, a large number of people are posting a lot of answers. The volume of these answers in the thousands, and the fact that the answers often require a detailed read by someone with at least some subject matter expertise in order to determine that the answer is actually bad, has effectively swamped our volunteer-based quality curation infrastructure. So what I'm talking about right now is ChatGPT, and in fact, there's another one that Google has that really hasn't gotten a whole lot of press, and there are other people who are basing it on this OpenAI technology, and they're saying this is artificial intelligence. And let me tell you, it is amazing. As I mentioned, I have been following it, and I have one of these preview accounts that I've been using and playing with. They became available in November. I think right now it's closed. You can't sign up, but who knows? They may open it up again. And you can go in there and ask a question. It is designed as a chat engine, so it has context with the things you've been asking. So if you're asking it a bunch of questions about your health or whatever, it's going to know that. And so it's going to give you responses but that are based on that. But you can ask it anything. You can ask it, who was the emperor of Rome in 5 BC? You can ask it anything you want to. And it even comes up with checklists, bullet points. It goes on and on. It is absolutely amazing what it's able to do. And this technology that OpenAI has come up with is something that can be used many ways in many types of things. And you're going to see it. It's going to be there very, very quickly. Now, there's a lot more to talk about here and how it is going to affect all of us. But I want to point you to a website, and I think I have it open. Looks like I might have closed that. but it's called you.com. This is a website that's using what they call AI, artificial intelligence, and we can talk about that as well, right? If it passes the Turing test, if you can't tell a computer from a person, is it intelligent? Well, I would say that it's not. I'd say it's machine learning, basically, but the intelligence starts coming in when it's sentient. And you might remember a Google researcher last year said that they had an artificial intelligence that had gained sentience. Yeah. It happened that fast. Something I didn't expect for decades. Looks like it's starting to happen now. And it's going to destroy a number of companies out there. It's going to destroy whole industries. And it's already started. And that's kind of scary. But have a look. Go online right now to you.com. And you can play around with a AI-based search engine. It is really quite cool. We're going to talk more about this ChatGPT, how it's going to affect everyone, where it's going, what does it mean to you and your job or your business. It could mean a problem. It could be good. I can tell you, Google has put out a red notice because of this. We've explained a little bit about AI, the Turing test, and talked a little bit about ChatGPT. There are some great and scary things going on, kind of all at the same time. We're going to talk about how it will affect your life this year. It is crazy. It's absolutely amazing. ChatGPT is what they call an AI. I would call it a machine learning system. And the idea behind it is they have fed it a lot of information. Now, it doesn't have currently active internet activity and connections. Right now, it only has data up through 2021. And I'm sure that'll change over time. It is based on technology that Google had developed and released here a few years back. It's just some freaking amazing stuff that they have done here. But you really can ask it any questions you want. So I'm on that you.com website right now. Anybody can use this. I'm in the GPT-3 preview. But that's not what we're going to use right now. I'm going to use something that anybody can use. So I'm going to say, tell me about Craig Peterson on iHeart. Okay. So you hit return and ta-da, up it comes. So it's giving me here 9 million results, 30 results less, right? But here we go. It's one of my podcasts over on one of the radio stations out there. So you can see me there. I'm going to say, tell me about Craig Peterson's radio show. Okay. And it is showing me here, well, actually, CraigPeterson.com radio show. So you can click on it. It'll take you there. It's showing podcasts over on Apple. It's showing my YouTube channel. That's kind of cool. Just all kinds of stuff. America's leading technology news commentator here over on Audible. I'm kind of all over the place. But it is absolutely amazing because it's answering my question. Now, it's still giving me links, issue.com. When I'm using something like ChatGPT directly or one of the other pieces of software that's using OpenAI, it comes up and gives me some very interesting results because it actually formulates an answer. It's frankly quite amazing. So there are some questions that you can ask, answers that it'll give. But I want you to go back to what we were talking about earlier, and that is our friends at Google. If you type in a Google search query, you know what you're going to get. You're going to get a bunch of links, and it's going to have a little bit of context from that web page. But there's also Google's moneymakers on there. Now, obviously, they're making money just by showing you results, but the real money is in the advertisers. And those advertising results, right there on the page, those are where they really make the money. So I want you to think about this a little bit. If there is an AI out there, now U.com, I think it gives pretty good results, but it's not an AI. It's not formulating an answer for me. It's just giving me pages to look at. But what would happen if Google was only to give an answer for you? You know, kind of like those little boxes. There's little pull-up tabs that you can bring up on the results screen. It's probably using some of this AI to do that. But what would happen if you said, "Hey, how do I turn off my microphone on my computer?" Something pretty simple. If it just told you how to turn off the microphone in your computer, or if it went the next step and said, "Hey, would you like me to turn it off for you?" What would you do? How could Google make money if something like that was in place? Well, that's why this company is worth so much. Right now, Microsoft is discussing making a $10 billion investment into OpenAI. That's a report from Semaphore. This deal that would eventually give Microsoft a 49% stake in OpenAI also includes a clause that Microsoft would receive 3/4 of OpenAI's profits until it recovers its investment. Isn't that something? With additional investors taking 49%, so almost the whole company, and OpenAI retaining the remaining 2% in equity. Now, that is based on a roughly $29 billion valuation of OpenAI, a company that's less than a handful of years old. Isn't that something? That's how they look at this. Microsoft wants to use it for all kinds of things, because one of the things that this ChatGPT and OpenAI can do is it can write blog posts, not just answer questions. It can write letters. It can write interview questions and interview answers for hiring. It can write advertising copy. It can write computer software. Isn't that just amazing? Microsoft had invested $1 billion in OpenAI back in 2019. They became OpenAI's exclusive cloud provider because that's where OpenAI is running all of their stuff. And they plan to integrate this ChatGPT into the Bing search engine. So they're planning on sending Google executives running for the door. Imagine what an advantage Microsoft would have over Bing Bing could have over Google if you could just ask it a question and it would give you an answer. Now, today, you have to be careful about the answers because there are some things in there that are harmful. In fact, in the preview, when you are using the chat bot, if you will, if it gives an answer, when it gives an answer, it has a thumbs up and a thumbs down. If you hit the thumb down, it then gives you the option of saying why. A simple one is the answer is incorrect. Another one is this is harmful. The answer's harmful, right? It's like gargle with bleach in order to get rid of the that nasty stuff that grows on your tongue sometimes, right? In other words, they know that it is not ready for prime time yet. And I think it'll be a while still before it's really ready for prime time. So what some companies have already started doing that are using this technology on their back end is they're saying it's a cure for writer's block. So if you are writing, and you know how it is, sometimes you just can't think of how to start something. Well, you go into one of these websites and you say, okay, let's do it. And you tell it the question, it answers the question, and now you've got something to write from. Because you're going to have to fix it, right? The grammar's poor, the spelling is even poor, punctuation is bad, and some of the information is bad. So this isn't going to change everything today, But over the course of the next 6 to 12 months, almost everything's going to change. It's just absolutely amazing to look at this stuff, right? So it's going to disrupt our friends at Google. We know that, right? And it's going to also be used for a few things. It's being used right now. There is a hacking group out there, and the hacking group has been using it to write new hacking software. So that's going to happen. Right? There are a lot of things that it's going to be used for. It's going to be used in cars. It's going to be used in, if Microsoft buys this like they're talking about, it's going to be used in Word. So you're sitting there in Word, you're trying to write something, it will come up with suggestions for you. It's amazing. And this type of technology, think about IBM's Watson that played on Jeopardy and beat Jennings over there. Think about that sort of thing. This core technology used for medical and medical diagnoses, at least helping to steer doctors in the right direction. It's just absolutely amazing what's happening out there. So check it out. Do a little research yourself. Find out more about ChatGPT because it is going to be changing things, including in the cybersecurity business that I'm in, right? Yeah, the only constant is change. We got a few topics to discuss revolving around cars right now. The cars have these dashboards, some studies out again showing how dangerous they are, and some manufacturers are selling subscriptions for some of this. We've heard some of these studies before. There's a new one out right now because many automakers have been getting rid of the good old-fashioned buttons and knobs that we have on our cars, right, that we drive around, our wonderful SUVs. You know, it's so easy to turn up the radio or turn it down. It's easy to glance down at the dashboard and see your speed and the fuel levels, etc., etc. But now they are switching everything over to infotainment systems. Now, not everybody, but many of them. Basically, they're strapping a tablet to your dashboard and saying, here is the center of all knowledge, right? And it's gotten so bad that in some lower-end cars that are out there, and particularly electric cars, they don't even have that dash right in front of you. You know, if you look at that dashboard, what is it showing you in a normal car? It's got, as I said, the speedometer is right there, the odometer, maybe the outside temperature, maybe your fuel economy, or how long it is going to last, right? Your fuel is going to last. It might have a few other things on there. Obviously, your signal lights are going to flash and various things. Some of the lower-end cars out there, including a couple of models of Tesla, do not have that. They've moved everything over from that wonderful little dashboard right in front of you to that tablet in the center of the dashboard there. So if you want to see how fast you're going, you've got to look over to the side to look at that tablet that's in the center of the dashboard. If you want to see what the temperature is outside, hopefully you can just look over there. But again, you've got to look over there. We're talking about moving your head a whole lot in order to do that. And heaven forbid you want to play around with, let's listen to this, let's play with the temperature, the seat temperature, the air conditioning, etc. And you have to go through multiple menus. Now, you might remember BMW had their iDrive system that was designed to make it so that you could just have that little knob, you know, so you turn the knob, it's right there by the shifter, and you can flip the knob up and down in order to select things, and you're looking on your dashboard. Nowadays, that's not the case. You got to look at that silly tablet. So new evidence is now showing that those touchscreens are far less safe and efficient as my 1980 Mercedes-Benz diesel. Okay, and this is according to the findings of a Swedish car magazine. So over the summer, the magazine conducted tests across 12 models of car, according to Futurism.com, 11 modern, along with one 2005 Volvo with physical controls, and allowed test drivers to get to know the ins and outs of the vehicles. The tests themselves were simple. Drivers were instructed to cruise down an empty airstrip at 68 miles per hour and were timed on the completion of 4 infotainment tasks, ranging from adjusting the AC to messing with the radio. The Swedish magazine found that the 2005 Volvo far outperformed the modern infotainment screen-equipped cars, with the driver completing all 4 tasks in just 10 seconds and 1,000 feet traveled. Meanwhile, the best time in the modern cars was nearly 14 seconds, but even these speeds were relative outliers because for the majority of infotainment-equipped vehicles, it took well over 20 seconds and at least 2,000 feet. So think about that, how far that is. 2,000 feet, you're messing with a tablet that's to your right, if you're driving in the U.S., and you're not looking at the road. How's that for dangerous? People have been complaining for years about people picking up and holding cell phones. Well, that's far less dangerous than it is to be looking over to the right while your vehicle travels 2,000 feet. That's just absolutely incredible. But they're not efficient to use, right? They control functions like the windshield wipers or climate control. It starts to get ridiculous. So some of the manufacturers are starting to think about maybe we should go back to the old analog controls. You know, they're permanently positioned. You know where they are. You learn where they are. You don't even have to look much of the time. You can just feel. You reach over and you grab the volume control. Right? And some of those things are right there on your steering wheel, of course. You know, volume, change the channel, some of those things, right? But you don't have to take your eyes off the road for maybe more than a quarter second. But a slippery touchscreen that does not have any sort of tactile feedback does not. So there's so many problems with this, and I can see why the car makers are doing this. It saves them a lot of money. They don't have to have these buttons and knobs. They don't have to place them anywhere, right? Because they don't even exist. So they don't have to mount them. Their costs get lower. It kind of goes on and on. But it doesn't make sense for you and me. And I'm looking forward to cars that are not that complicated anymore. And as I mentioned, some of the vendors you'll find aren't doing that anymore, which is really, really good. Now, this is something that we talked about before, kind of in a similar direction. If you buy a car nowadays, you almost have to buy it with built-in GPS. So the car comes, it's got the maps, and it drives you down the road. Some of them are really nice, like in one of our cars, it will, if it's announcing a turn or something, it'll only announce it through the front left, or in other words, the driver's side speaker, so it's not bothering everybody else, and it's letting you what to do. So some of those integration things are kind of nice. They might even vibrate your seat or your steering wheel to let you know that you need to turn. But there's a huge problem here just over the last few years, and it's occurred a couple of times now, and that is you have to have a digital network for it to get updates. You know, back in the day, I had a GPS that picked up the traffic conditions over FM band subcarriers. So you didn't have to have any data. But then they started adding 2G data to the cars. And then 3G data to the cars. And your remote control for your car, for instance, may well be running over a digital network. And not a network that you have to pair it with. You don't have to tell it what your Wi-Fi password is. It is tying in directly itself. AT&T was one of the big carriers for this sort of data. So your car would then get a message to auto start, right? Push the button, ta-da, up it starts. And you could do it from almost anywhere. You didn't have to be close to the car because it was going over the digital cellular phone network. Pretty cool, isn't it? But then 2G was shut down. And then 3G was shut down. So all of those wonderful features that were running over the cellular digital network all of a sudden disappeared on you, didn't they? And some of these vendors wanted thousands of dollars to upgrade it. Thousands of dollars to upgrade your GPS. That's why I don't rely on a GPS in the car. I'd rather use Apple CarPlay and use my phone, which gets updates all of the time, right? And has its own digital network built into it. Well, BMW now has started selling heated seat subscriptions for $18 a month. Yeah, the whole auto industry is absolutely racing towards all of these microtransactions. You pay by the month for heated seats. You pay by the month for a remote start on the car and many other things. So, the cost of the car isn't necessarily what you're paying the dealer. It's what all of these subscription charges are going to be. A couple of things in the news about Tesla I thought I would bring up. There's that accident that occurred in November 22 with footage out there now. And Tom's Guide here, he put 1,000 miles on a Tesla. We're going to talk about what he thought about it. Well, Elon Musk has been a very busy man. All of the different companies that he's started. We won't go into those right now. And they've had varying levels of success. Of course, one of the biggest ones is Tesla. And they have been driving not just the electric car business with their various models of cars, that in fact, when they came out and were being tested by the consumer products people, it broke the test. It was so good. That's how safe it was. It was really something to see. He had put a lot of work into it. And now we're seeing Teslas on the road everywhere. I was driving the other day and I counted no less than a half a dozen in just about an hour of driving. To me, that's a lot. You compare that to somebody like Ford or GM. Well, forget about it, right? They've got a lot more cars on the road. But Tesla is doing a great job. Now, there's some people who aren't very happy about Elon Musk and what he's been doing with Twitter, and that's kind of distracted from him. But Elon Musk sent out a tweet, and this is really kind of a bad, wrong place, wrong time sort of a tweet. This was just before Thanksgiving Day in 2022. He said, the Tesla full self-driving. Did you get those words? Full self-driving beta is now available to anyone in North America who requests it from the car screen, assuming you have bought this option. Congratulations to Tesla Autopilot/AI team on achieving a major milestone. It's pretty cool. So he's saying, hey, if you paid the $15,000 upgrade for your car to get the full self-driving beta, all you have to do is go on the screen and hit a button, and it will download. Well, of course, it takes a little while to download. You probably want to be at home on Wi-Fi, etc., when your car does that download. Well, what is kind of bad timing on that is that just a few hours later, there was an accident out in San Francisco's Yerba Buena Tunnel. And this particular accident involved a number of cars, 8 cars, injured 9 people, and it happened on Thanksgiving Day. That's not a good thing. Now, obviously, we've talked before and people have commented on the fact that when you are driving a car, you expect certain other drivers on the road to behave in a specific way. I get kind of frustrated when I'm sitting in the passenger seat and the driver of the car that I'm in doesn't do what is expected of them. So, if you've got traffic that's merging onto the highway and you're on the highway, you don't slow down for them an incredible amount. They are supposed to yield to you. So by you hitting the brake when someone's trying to come on and merge and they have the yield, and you are behaving in a way that's different, you are much more likely to cause an accident. Well, that's what has been happening with some of the autonomous cars over the years. They're driving along. They don't understand what's happening right now. So the default is, okay, we will push the brakes and come to a stop. Sometimes they'll pull over to the side of the road. We talked about those autonomous car I think it was an Uber car. Anyways, it was being pulled over by the police because a light was out, and it pulled over, and the police came up and looked inside. There's no one inside, and then the car decided it was going to drive even further down the road. It was really kind of funny, kind of a slapstick routine there with the police. That's one thing. Nobody's injured. When there's an 8-car pileup and 9 people injured, including a little child, things start getting worrisome. Well, there's some video out there that was posted by The Intercept, and it shows the cars in that tunnel out in San Francisco. So they're all driving along. It's actually fairly light traffic considering San Francisco, and I have driven there before. And the cars are coming along in the tunnel. Everything's looking good. And then you see a white car, turn on its left signal light. Now, this car, white car, is in the lane to the right of the fast lane. So this road has 5 lanes in it. And of course, you got the slow lane on one side, and all the way over on the left-hand side is the fast lane. So this Tesla was in California, they number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, with 5 being the fast lane. Some states do it the opposite way. So the Tesla was in lane number 4. It turns on its left signal and starts to move into the fast lane. While it's moving into the fast lane, in other words, it's still occupying lanes 4 and 5, it applies the brakes. I mean, it comes to a quick stop, like someone would, jam on the brakes. Now, looking at this video, I looked at it really closely to try and see, well, was there something in the road that the Tesla might have misinterpreted? Maybe there's some blowing trash, or maybe something had fallen off a vehicle in front of that Tesla. And I'm looking at the video, and I don't see anything in front of it. So here it is. It's pulling over. A black car smashes into it. Another SUV smashes into that. A truck smashes into it. A car goes up. It plows in, and its rear wheels are off the ground. A couple of other cars smash into it. And then, of course, being California, nobody bothers to pull over to help all these people in the accident until probably about 50 cars have passed, maybe 100 cars. Then finally, there's a good Samaritan. Hey, what do you know? So it is obviously the Tesla's fault, right? If you're rear-ended, it's typically just absolutely, totally, and completely considered your fault if you're rear-ended. So this was the Tesla's fault. So apparently, well, let me just say that differently. Reportedly, this Tesla was driving with its full self-driving feature turned on. Now, what does full self-driving mean to you? What does it mean to me? It probably, by default means the same thing, which is you get in the car, you push a button, well, you tell it where you want to go, you push a button, and ta-da, you are gone, right? Well, that's not apparently what Tesla thinks full self-driving is. Tesla says that you can engage this, but you still are in charge of the car. You still have to maintain your hands on the steering wheel. If something happens, you should drive, take over, right? And the Tesla's designed so that if you start playing around with the controls, it will give up and you can then start the driving. So, I think that all makes sense to me. But when you are using full self-driving, I think most people are thinking it's autonomous. In other words, the car is thinking and driving itself. So Tesla on its website, I looked it up, says that full self-driving currently enabled feature requires active driver supervision and do not make the vehicle autonomous. Some other manufacturers out there of autonomous vehicles, again, autonomous to different degrees, have come out and removed themselves that saying of full self-driving, because they aren't. They are not autonomous. No car out there that's on the road being tested right now is autonomous. They're all trying to get there, right? But none of them are, at least at this stage. Eventually, I think they will be. It's a problem. Now, Tesla, this is a misleading stat. Sorry about this one. But Tesla in vehicles were involved in almost 70% of the almost 400 crashes involving advanced driver assist systems reported over a 1-year period here last year out in California. And I say it's misleading because most of the autonomous vehicles, or at least self-driving vehicles, are Teslas out in California and worldwide, frankly. So, it's interesting to read these articles and see how they might be kind of misleading you. And this is from Inside EVs, which is a whole industry site about electric cars, electric vehicles. So interesting, isn't it, that poor old Elon tweeted saying, hey, full self-driving beta is now available to anyone. Just touch the screen. And it's reported that this guy was using full self-driving, and thankfully no one was killed in this particular accident that we're talking about here. I think it was a 2-year-old was injured, as well as 8 other people. But you can bet they are getting a serious look into. And on the other side, one of the major investors over at Tesla is complaining, has been very vocal on Twitter about Elon Musk and how he's been involved in Twitter and he's distracted. And Elon's saying, hey, listen, I haven't missed a single meeting over there at Tesla. And he has told people at Twitter that they cannot make any major changes without his personal approval. And that some of these major changes are going to have to wait because he is busy with Tesla. So that's kind of interesting, too. Absolutely interesting. A bunch of insults on Twitter, of course. And Elon Musk didn't shut him down or anybody else, to the best of my knowledge. So that's kind of cool, too. So one more thing here before we disappear. And this is Tom's guide. And what Tom had to say. This is an opinion piece over on Tom's Guide. You might have seen it before. Pretty decent website. It has a lot of information. Much of it's actually quite good, quite accurate, particularly when he takes things apart and breaks them down. But Tom Pritchard said, I've driven more than 1,000 miles in Teslas, and I will never buy one. Okay, it's a very vogue brand. A lot of people like it, but he doesn't like it. He says his beef is with Tesla, not with electric cars as a whole. Hey, hopefully you got my insider show notes this week. A friend of mine is offering some free training for people who want to move up in their careers. So I sent out a couple emails on that as well. But sign up right now, craigpeterson.com/subscribe.